You know, it's always cool when a movie totally proves you wrong, defying your cynical expectations to deliver an experience that's way better than anything you could have predicted. I mean, that's not what happened here, of course, but I imagine it's nice when it actually does happen. After that less than impressive trailer which dropped a few months ago, I went into Cruella expecting a pointless backstory that tries and fails to reframe one of Disney's most hated villains into a cool, punky, edgy anti-hero that we all wink wink secretly love. And well, that's pretty much what the movie delivered. To be fair, a character that wants to murder puppies so she can make them into fur coats was always going to be a tough sell, but what the fuck? If Disney want to set themselves impossible challenges, then that's up to them. I'm just here to point and laugh. Cruella marks the latest entry in Disney's unpleasant trend of rewriting the history of its famous antagonists, depicting them as either tragic, misunderstood heroes unfairly persecuted by jealous, selfish men, or as smart, ambitious go-getters determined to rise to the top at any cost. And the question I keep asking myself is, why? Oh yeah, of course. Anyway, there's a lot I want to say about this movie, so let's stop fucking around and get into this shit. The movie opens with a breezy montage of Cruella's early life. Born into a not particularly wealthy single mother in the 1950s, she's named Estella. It soon becomes obvious that she's a troublemaker by nature, talented but defiant and vindictive towards anyone who fucks with her. Her mother's attempts to curb her behaviour meet with only limited success, and when Estella's eventually expelled from school, her mum's left with no choice but to go cap in hand to a wealthy acquaintance to beg for help. That doesn't work out too well though, and her mum gets pushed off a cliff by some evil Dalmatians.
No way!
I guess we'll overlook the fact that they were just loyal animals doing exactly what they were trained to do, protect their master. Anyway, Estella escapes to London and soon falls in with a couple of petty thieves who take her in and teach her how to survive. Flash forward 10 years and Estella's a wannabe fashion designer played by Emma Stone. Wait, what? 10 years? Really? That would make her about 20 years old by my reckoning. The thing is, Emma Stone is like 32 now, and as much as she's a good actress, well, she's not exactly a young looking 32. Anyway, whatever. Estella's chance soon comes when one of her buddies manages to blag her a job at a top London fashion house. Unfortunately, it turns out to be shitty work. Literally. Frustrated by her lack of opportunities, she gets drunk one night and vandalises a window mannequin, which just so happens to catch the attention of fashion designer Baroness Hellman, who just so happens to be visiting the store that day. Wow, that was lucky. Before you know it, Estella's working for Hellman as a designer, where she quickly gains the older woman's trust, until she notices her wearing the pendant that once belonged to her mother. Damn, what are the odds that she just so happens to find herself working for the very woman who caused her mother's untimely death? Naturally, Estella wants some payback, so she adopts the alter ego of Cruella and begins staging publicity stunts that draw attention away from Hellman. Embracing the punk rock movement that's going on at the time, Estella's able to paint herself as the cool young rebel, making Hellman look old and dated by comparison. The movie becomes a battle of wits and wills between the two women, Estella trying to bring Hellman down, and Hellman trying to figure out who Cruella is so that she can have her murdered. Because yeah, in this world, fashion designers are apparently so fucking powerful that they can literally orchestrate murders, manipulate the police and local officials, and act like government entities in their own rights.
Yes, I can definitely smell shite.
Naturally, this rivalry culminates in a really contrived confrontation between the two of them, where we learn that Hellman fails to recognise a very obvious trap when she sees it. Cruella can apparently fit a parachute inside her skirt, which somehow deploys without her turning upside down, and nobody in this movie has the slightest hint of common sense. The movie ends with Estella letting go of her former identity and fully embracing the persona of Cruella, one of the most evil characters in Disney history. Yay! I felt so uplifted after watching this film. There's a lot of things to criticise about this movie, believe me, but I suppose I should get the simple stuff out the way first. For a start, Cruella is long, 2 hours and 14 minutes long to be precise, and Jesus Christ, just like Tatiana on a Saturday night, you really start to feel that extra length after a while. Compare that runtime to Maleficent, which clocked in at a lean and mean 97 minutes, or the fucking Lion King, which was only 88, and you begin to appreciate how bloated and self-indulgent this movie really is. After a while, I genuinely felt like it was never gonna end. Every scene, montage, and transition goes on way longer than it needs to, and it's crammed so full of pointless shit that it becomes a genuine chore to get through. Like discount Ziggy Stardust here, who serves absolutely no purpose in the movie, does nothing of significance, and basically exists so that Cruella has an excuse to look at more outfits. Which brings me along to another criticism of this film. So many outfits. Seriously, I know this movie's about the conflict between rival fashion designers, not exactly Clash of the Titans, but whatever I guess. So naturally the costumes were gonna play a part in things, but Jesus, this film just never ever lets up. Every single scene you're bombarded with wave after wave of ludicrous, flamboyant 1970s garbage that no actual human being would ever wear. What starts out as a novel point of interest quickly becomes exhausting to look at, and unless you're a teenage girl that's insanely besotted with the punk rock era, I really don't know what you're supposed to get out of it. Naturally, being a female-centric Disney movie, the male characters are all useless, clueless, spineless, effeminate morons without the slightest ability to think or act for themselves. Mark Strong plays the only character with even a hint of brainpower, but he's made sure to stay firmly at the periphery of the story and never once challenges his female superiors. Because we can't have a pesky man spoiling the fun, even though this would totally never be allowed to happen if the sexes were reversed. The sad thing is that I can barely even muster any emotion for this kind of blatant double standards now. It's basically just how films are these days. All of these criticisms are fair enough, but they're basically just petty bitching on my part. The real problem lies at the very core of this movie, and that's Cruella herself. Her character arc is all about the conflict between the good and evil aspects of her personality. On the one hand, you've got Estella, a talented but down on her luck nobody with a tragic backstory who dreams of being something more. In short, she's the nice one you're expected to root for. Then there's her alter ego Cruella, a flamboyant, ruthless narcissist who's out to win and crush her opponents at any cost. She spent most of her early life trying to be one of these people, while secretly yearning to indulge the other. The point of the story is her realization that she can only go so far as Estella before people start betraying her trust and taking advantage of her good nature, which forces her to turn more and more into Cruella to fight her way to the top. And if I was a charitable man, I'd say the movie is trying to make the point that people who are only capable of being sweet, trusting and compassionate will inevitably get screwed over by their more unscrupulous counterparts, and that sometimes you have to be a little bit ruthless and selfish in order to get ahead. Given the audience this movie's designed to appeal to, I'd say this particular message is mostly aimed at young women who are generally seen as being more agreeable and conscientious, lacking the assertiveness needed to stand up for themselves. That's fair enough, but the problem with this is twofold. Firstly, the movie doesn't seem to know how to handle this transformation in Cruella, or the implications for the people around her. Like, the script makes it obvious that Jasper's becoming uncomfortable with her increasingly ruthless methods and arrogant persona, but then he just kind of stops caring about it and becomes a loyal, subservient henchman by the end. I mean, she clearly hasn't learned to rein in her behaviour, so why aren't you calling her out on this shit? Oh yeah, because that would be inconvenient for the story. It also feels like Cruella hasn't learned a single thing from her experiences. By the end of the movie, she's become just as much of a greedy, self-absorbed asshole as the woman she fought so hard to defeat. She's even moved into her house and taken on her servants. She's become the very thing she hated, and I couldn't help but think, what the fuck am I supposed to be cheering for here? Now don't get me wrong, Emma Stone is good at what she does. She's fun, charismatic, and she commands the screen in a way that so few actresses do these days. And watching her absolutely annihilate the scenery with Emma Thompson is fun in a basic, superficial kind of way, but only because you're watching two competent actors sparking off each other. There's nothing more disheartening than watching a good actor labouring away in some shitty production that doesn't deserve them, and watching Stone's performance here, I'm kind of reminded of Will Smith doing everything in his power to salvage a half-decent movie from the wreckage of Suicide Suicide Squad. Guess what? It didn't work then and it doesn't work now. Which leads me neatly onto the second issue. The movie's moral framework is completely and totally fucked. Just like Rey and Captain Marvel taught young girls that they can be unstoppable, invincible badasses without having to work and strive for it in the slightest way, so Cruella teaches them that they should act like selfish, entitled brats and treat everyone around them like shit. Yeah, just try that in the real world and see how far it gets you. This is all the result of unsuccessfully trying to mesh the competing demands of ending the movie on an upbeat note with a protagonist you're supposed to root for, with the reality of who and what Cruella will ultimately become. A different movie that wasn't saddled with all this baggage might have ended with Cruella striking a balance between the two opposing aspects of her personality, realising that while you sometimes have to be ruthless and calculating to get ahead, you should never lose your sense of compassion and decency, or you'll become some kind of monster. Cruella does go on to become a monster, so that balance and emotionally satisfying message is impossible here. But drink her, you vexingly vindictive virtuoso, I hear you say. Joker featured a similar story about a protagonist with a tragic past that ultimately leads him down a dark path to becoming an iconic villain, and you just couldn't stop spunking over that movie. Yeah, people are legitimately comparing Cruella to fucking Joker. I mean, I shouldn't really have to explain this, but here goes. The difference here, dear viewer, is that Joker is the story of a vulnerable, deeply damaged man, and his descent into madness in the midst of an uncaring society that hammers him down at every opportunity. Arthur Fleck doesn't become the Joker to take revenge for past transgressions or to seek out fame and fortune. He falls into the role by accident after a brutal attack one night, and ultimately embraces it as the last of his fragile psyche collapses around him. And most importantly of all, the movie absolutely doesn't try to frame him as some kind of cool, edgy anti-hero that we all secretly aspire to. That is the fucking difference here. And that's why the idiots who try to draw comparisons between two vastly different movies are literally grasping at anything they can think of to defend this shitty film. And shitty it is. Just like the fashion industry that it endlessly obsesses over, Cruella is a vapid, bloated, self-important, and ultimately pointless waste of time and resources, telling a story that really didn't need to be told, trying to redeem a character that absolutely doesn't deserve it, and delivering a muddled, incoherent message that nobody needs to hear. And despite its talented cast, big budget and lavish production design, it can never really escape the fact that it's a movie nobody particularly asked for or wanted. If you really want to see Cruella de Vil as she was meant to be seen, then you should probably watch the original animated movie instead, before Disney inevitably decides to purge it for wrongthink. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now!